Buzz Hoon. I'm the acting dean for the College of Fine Arts and Communication, and I have the honor of welcoming you to this event. It is a great celebration. It really shows a great tradition and connection between alumni, faculty, students, and it's just a very proud moment for the department and the college as well. We're very happy to have this and have you here. So I'd like to welcome you to this event, and I have the pleasure of now passing the torch to Julie.
This is short, but I'm going to read it, otherwise I will ramble. Hi, everybody. I am, for the guests, Silas's professor. When I was deciding how to introduce Silas, I came up with all sorts of gushy things to say. For the spirit of brevity, I settled on one word: exceptional. When most students are doing what they do in their time off, Silas is in the studio working. I know this because he sends me texts well past my bedtime on Saturday nights to ask advice about a piece he's working on. I've also received texts at odd hours so he can share an article or he just read or an artist he just discovered. This is what artists do. They work. They are curious and they are tenacious in their quest to learn everything they can about the world they occupy. And the cherry on top is that Silas is also a really kind human being. I am retiring in a few weeks, and I cannot think of a better way to cap off a truly blessed teaching career than being honored to introduce one of the most remarkable students to grace the halls of the Department of Art. Silas, congratulations on this well-deserved award and on your final exhibition at WIU.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I wanted to start by talking about the overarching themes of my exhibit. A lot of people have asked if there was a chronology or a specific narrative, and there is not, but there are some overarching themes as far as the content and concepts of my work. A lot of the narratives and concepts I have are primarily influenced by my practice as an Anglican and as a Christian, and as well as to what the title refers to, Crisis of Faith. And what that refers to is having your basic assumptions that are kind of wired into your childhood, and in that moment growing up where they get confronted and you have to relearn them, kind of reevaluate what you were taught as a child. And the artwork I've been making since freshman year has been kind of influenced by those ideas, kind of a documentation of that kind of very personal journey along the way. The first time I included religious imagery in my work that kind of led to this body of work was freshman year. We had an ordained iconographer speak in my art appreciation class, which is someone who makes those very austere Catholic icons that you see in churches of the saints and of Christ. And I was very taken with this for a number of reasons. Imagery, been very, the imagery I was surrounded with was very different. Jesus knocking on the door, or angels like walking children across the bridge. Very, sickly sweet, a little kitschy, but then these images were something different. I was very interested in artists, kind of practicing their faith through their work as an artist. One of the first works I made after this iconographer gave her spiel and I became interested in this as subject matter, I drew a portrait, in the style of like a Byzantine icon, but instead of depicting a specific person, the whole idea behind it was to make something that was more universal or relatable, so something saintly, but something just any person could walk up and relate to in a way. When I was going through confirmation in the Anglican Church, the priest kind of going through these classes with me said, well, these are the saints we recognize, but we're all saints. We all have that same potential. And I was really taken with that idea instead of an us versus them mentality, like, we're all kind of in the same boat. And that's what influenced a lot of this work, as well as growing up with, kitschy objects, from like the Christian bookstores, like, I saw these breath mints, and they were called testaments. Things like that. I mean, they are what they are, and they're funny, but I think overall they're a little misleading, and they don't do justice to some of the bigger ideas found in my faith and in many religions, and specifically Christianity. You have the idea of a grand supreme creator and the son of that creator, but then you have, silly, naked baby angels and testaments and what have you. So it's very important for me to kind of delve into religious imagery, but make very personal and relatable statements that are relevant to someone living today and now, not just for historical importance. One of the first paintings, or rather two paintings I wanted to talk about were these two. This first one is called Self-Portrait. It's St. Peter. St. Peter's story was one of the apostles of Christ. When he died, or when he was martyred, he was going to be killed in a mock crucifixion, but he didn't feel worthy to even die like Christ, so per his request, he was crucified upside down. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the imagery I had in my head for a long time. And there's various symbols throughout here, but on the other side of that, what kind of led to these being created was I saw some paintings by a painter named George Baselitz, who paints these really expressive paintings and flips them upside down and displays them like that. And they look like upside down paintings. And I saw one, and it was like a regular figure, but they were upside down. And from that, I like the idea of creating a balanced composition. So the painting is right side up, but the figure, incidentally, is upside down, and just playing with how the figure is represented. The figure is the most represented in art, so being a figurative painter, the challenge is then how do I do that without being repetitive or worn out? And one of the things that happened formally with just thinking of it as paint and shape and color is there's kind of a psychological tension between focal point. Whenever there's a face or a portrait in a painting, you automatically go to that automatically becomes the focal point. But formally, as far as just the paint and the light and the color, your eye goes up here, without knowing it's a figure, but then you're pulled from that back and forth between the face. So there was, some kind of technical experimentation, and after this one, I continued it into that painting. I painted it a second time to experiment with how, again, those formal qualities like color and line tell the story just as much as, if more so than the recognizable symbols like a figure and a halo and a sword. Those are all symbols, but it's the color and the line and all those other formal qualities that actually make the painting and its statement. And so that was why I continued this and wanted to show these together. Other than one being male and one female, the symbolism is relatively the same, but they're painted very differently. Moving on from that, painting I want to talk to you next is over here, the big one. That's the subject is Adam and Eve and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden after committing original sin. And obviously, making artwork about growing up in the church. This is a story you hear quite often. It's in storybooks. I went to countless, children's book illustrations of this, which was partially inspired by. But it's all presented in a very literal way. And with this painting, as far as the narrative, I wanted it to be allegorical and not concrete. So thinking of Genesis and that story of Adam and Eve not being something that happens chronologically, historically, but being kind of a religious allegory for why there's evil in the world or why it's so rough on planet Earth. And so one of the explanations I kind of honed down on was choice. So I grouped everything into twos. So you got two red fruits, the snake branches off, in kind of a fork, there's a path and it branches off here, trying to represent choice and show Adam and Eve non-traditionally. I started out with photographs of the human figure, and I drew and abstracted, and until I had the composition worked out how I wanted to execute it. And like I said earlier, this was influenced by coloring books I had when I was little that had Bible stories, and then were like the storybooks I had. And I kind of wanted to show that with the bright color palette, which is something you might expect in a Sunday school room, as well as this kind of snarky reference to the nudity. Typically in Christian art, the nudity, a nude figure is covered with fig leaves, and then I made reference to that but offset them. Being smart aleck. So yeah. And finally, the last piece I wanted to talk a little bit about was this woodcut here. Now the planning for that piece goes back to sophomore year. I took an independent study, and I spent that independent study planning a mural that I never painted. And the mural was, the idea initially started out as painting something based off the Divine Comedy, or Dante's Inferno, which is an epic poem that describes a pilgrim's journey through these 9 circles of hell, each circle representing a specific sin. And that's where it started, but the more I researched it and the more I read and researched these different narratives, the less interested I became in just illustrating someone else's work that a lot of artists had already illustrated. And then kind of bouncing from all that research I had done and creating my own narrative. So the general idea is there's a similar structure to Dante's Inferno. However, this is meant to be a kind of tortured, abstract look at Earth, or real life, not hell. But and so at the top, you have the 2 figures kind of at the foot of God, taking little pieces of divinity, and then it kind of gets brought down here and mucked about with, and all kinds of crazy things. The initial concept was to have one side, and divinity is used in a positive way, and on one side, it gets kind of perverted or used in a bad way. But I threw that out pretty quick because that's kind of a polarizing us versus them worldview that I don't actually hold. And so the concepts led a lot into this. And then this is a little bit more improvisational as far as how I drew them. So it was about improvising a form and then deciding if it works. If it didn't, I paint over it and work from there. So being intentional as far as like composition, what I kept, but trying to keep the figures kind of naively drawn and improvised as well. And there's some collage elements, and the title, it references a few things. It's called Coloring Book Pages, Hell is Other People, God is in us all. The coloring book pages, again, referencing childhood and how things like those storybooks or coloring books kind of ingrain those basic assumptions into you, and then how Crisis of Faith is referring to going back to those basic assumptions, hopefully with a clean slate and relearning, what you believe for yourself. And so that's one side of it, and then just kind of keying into this, being an abstracted mural of just Earth and the state of things, but based off an image of hell. The title, Hell is Other People, is a reference to a play by the philosopher Sartre, and it ends with these people have died and gone to hell, and it's all kinds of philosophical statements, but it ends with the statement, hell is other people. And that was kind of the inspiration and the imagery and just the concept behind this piece. And then as far as materials, a lot of the work is interdisciplinary. Primarily a painter, but whenever I use printmaking or sculpture, I try to implement those all, and I think I showed pretty well in here with some collage elements and painting on top of the woodcut. So that wraps up the works I want to talk with. Before I close and go on to questions, I wanted to first thank the Mavianos for not only their generous scholarship but helping make this event possible. It's really appreciated, and this is a great turnout. I'm very grateful for that. I also wanted to thank all my professors and family, everyone who's contributed to my journey so far. I didn't do this all by myself, far from it. So many people have contributed to this journey, and I'm aware of that, and I'm very thankful. And I especially want to thank Julie for introducing me, but not just being my painting teacher, but being my friend and mentor during my short 2 years here. I'm glad I came here when I did. It's made a big impact on my life. I'm gonna keep owing her as far as my artistic career and where I go from now. Whenever I paint by myself, I still hear her correcting me when I try to cut a corner or something. I hear her letting me know I'm still gonna have that voice. So you too. I'm great. Yeah. I want to thank my parents. They've been very supportive of me getting an art degree. Not the most traditional or lucrative path, but they've all been very supportive of that, and I am grateful for that. I want to thank my girlfriend, Camber. I don't see her. There she is. When we first met, I did not have any ambition to even get a GED, let alone go to college and discover I had a passion for this and wanted to devote my life to it. And she's very supportive of everything, and I'm always grateful for that. I wouldn't be, again, this didn't happen just because of me. So I'm thankful. And she has a senior recital at 7:30. So she goes, go fast. And lastly, I just wanted to thank all of you for coming out here. This is a great turnout, and I'm really grateful. So thank you.
we have time for a couple quick questions, but we have more program to get to.
Yeah.
I just want to know about the rags and the clothing there.
It's lace and it's actually undergarments basically. So something everyday and common to our experience mixed with the divine and the holy. I think there tends to be a gap between, you know, the elevation of like Christ and the saints, despite the fact that they were all, you know, living on earth just like us. So I try to close the gap between those two in a lot of my work, and that was one of the things there. And then just formally, I was very interested in textural, building up surface, and how I could do that.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yes.
and I've seen some of the Buddhist art, they also have panels of different scenes that overlay.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there's any connection between that and panels that you see in the last work you described.
Not directly, but I do read a lot of like different, you know, texts from different philosophies and different religions, and that has influenced a lot of my worldview as well as the content of my work as well. So maybe indirectly, but not directly in that one. Yes.
What's next for you?
To keep the momentum going. I don't want to stop being productive or making all this. This is all, everything in here I made this senior year, so from August last year to now. And I just kind of want to keep that going. You know, whatever I'm doing as far as work, I want to keep my studio practice going and stay involved in the arts. I'm currently looking into opportunity at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. They recently reached out to me, and so I'm looking at that. I also have a residency for a couple weeks over the summer at Farewell House. So yeah, just keep the momentum going, keep making work, keep looking.
All right. Thank you. Kat, I
Thank
think
you.
it's your turn.
Hi, I'm Kat Myers. I'm the chair of the Department of Art. And I have had the pleasure of walking around and getting to know the Mavianos this afternoon. One of the things that I wanted to share was kind of their connection with Western, because I have been asked that by several. And they met here. They met at a lecture and apparently never left each other's side after that, is my understanding. So George received his undergraduate degree here in art history, and Renee was here as well, but she actually, when George went to Northern, she kind of went with him, and so she finished her degree up there. She feels kind of like that's cheating. I don't think so we're gonna go with that. And she finished her degree in education, and she started teaching, and get lost here. They got married in 1966, so they are going on what? 50. That's pretty impressive. And Renee started teaching high school. George taught at the humanities department at Bright Community College, and then moved on to teach down in Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, where he retired in 1997 from being a dean, I believe. That's probably partly why he retired. And then Renee completed her MFA degree in 18, wow. You're aging well. 1985, sorry. While raising 3 children. She is still very active in the studio. They own a bookstore and gallery down in Cartersville, Illinois, where George still binds books and does book repair. And we were just talking about how Renee is very active in the sketchbook. So again, all of you students, very important, drawing, keep doing it. So, but without any more, it's my honor to introduce to you Renee and George Maviano. I would also like to thank all of you guys for coming, and thank you guys very much for your generosity. I did not put that in my introduction.
Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming. as Kat has suggested, this is a long time in coming. We've had a wonderful experience developing this art prize with Western Illinois University, and we have special thanks that I'll let George itemize. But this is really a high point for us, that we can give back to the college that gave so much to us. The one thing I do like about the senior art prize that we're giving is that it's for somebody who's completed their work. For me, that's really important, because I know how easy it is to start things. You get a little lost in the middle, it gets harder, it's a big muddle. But to bring something to a good end, like Silas has, is really impressive. And that's what we want to applaud, people who finish well. And so we're glad that you're here to celebrate with us. Thank you.
I'm gonna make this quick, and I'm gonna try to, it's like the Academy Awards, and I have to think of all the things that have helped us on this, but Brad, are you around? There he is.
There he is.
He started it all when he came knocking on our door a number of years ago, and we began to think about how we would use our money and make it fruitful and to grow. And so we thought about it, and over the years, Dean Shaw, where is he at? There he is, over here. Well, Charles Wright, he's not here anymore. He was chairman of the department. But now we have Kat, who has been very helpful. Tyler here. And Paul kind of became our transitional member when Julie Baker left. Is Paul? No, there he is. There's a hand back there. We go back to SIU and the athletic department and stuff, so it was nice to see a new face. This is a big deal for us. I mean, you know, you retire and you wonder, and for those, where's this young lady here who's retiring, you know, what are you going to do next? And you feel like you're out of the game, maybe, a little bit, unless you really work it hard. And instituting this prize just makes, I think, both Renee and I feel we're back in the game again, you know, through the students here, the faculty, the administrators that have just been so generous to us. So thank you all. And I can't think of a better individual to win the first annual Maviano Braybeck Award. So Silas, you have set a benchmark for
Brad,
it doesn't fold, huh?
Thank you.
Well, I just want to thank him. As he said, it's been a long way in the making. The first trip, or the second trip down, we were throwing artwork in the back of the car, including a Rauschenberg. Correct me if I said that right. And so it's in the back of a Ford Taurus coming back to Macomb with a Thesis. So I don't think we take art like that anymore. I mean, travel-wise. So, but it has been a long and fun time. Really got to know you. We've both had kids and grandkids come along, and sitting in one house and build another house, and 2 bed and breakfasts that you're staying in have closed since you've been coming here. So that's how long it's been. But I really appreciate what you've done now here. I mean, and for those that don't know, you were back earlier. You did an exhibit of your artwork here at one point, and George came back and is kind of an expert on the WPA stuff. And so when we had the WPA exhibit, George came back and spoke at that as well. So they've been involved with us for a long time, not just today. And I just want to thank them. That's what makes our university better, is when our alumni are involved like you two have been. So I thank you very much. Thank you.